Karen Rowland opened her eyes and looked at her watch. There were 20 minutes left before the alarm went off. Karen felt Bill stir behind her and turned to face him. He looked at her with a smile, so Karen grabbed the back of his head and pulled him to her lips. Bill kissed back and then leaned back. "Does your breath smell?" she asked. Bill answered her question by kissing her again. "No, I just wanted to look into your magnificent eyes. Good morning." Karen's hand left his neck and went down to his shoulders and then to his arms. It was great to feel those muscles again. During the months of chemotherapy, Bill's body became noticeably thinner. The former Penn State wrestling heavyweight dropped from his pre-cancer weight of 111 kilograms to less than 81 kilograms, which made Bill look like Dorothy's scarecrow at 190 centimeters tall. Chemotherapy ended 8 months ago. The cancer was in remission, and Bill was regaining much of his tone and weight. Karen's hand continued down Bill's body and found what it was looking for. Another devastating effect caused by the treatment, in addition to the loss of muscle mass, was Bill's ability to remain aroused for any extended period. That, too, was a thing of the past, and Karin had the proof within her reach. Before the cancer scare, Karin would have jumped out of bed and started her day as soon as she opened her eyes. The couple has always had a healthy sex life, but after Bill's illness, Karin began to focus more on living in the moment, which is what she did right now. Karin curled up in Bill's lap and got to work. Once Bill was ready, Karin straddled him. "Let me feel it, Bill. Let it go. I want to feel you reach the finish line right now." Usually Bill would hold back until Karin did it once or twice, but this morning he knew what she wanted. She needed to prove her ability to make him lose all control. So he did. When they calmed down, Karin leaned over and kissed him. She opened her eyes and saw Bill smiling. "I love you, Bill." Bill's smile became wider. A minute later, the alarm sound brought them back to reality. Karin rolled off Bill, grabbed the crutch that was next to the bed, and headed to the bathroom. She grabbed a washcloth, wet it with warm water, and tossed it to Bill, who was still lying in bed. He was now lying on his left side, watching his naked wife in the bathroom. "Do you need to come here? I need to shower and get ready. I need to catch the 7:40 train into the city. You get ready, I can use the bathroom downstairs and I'll feed the kids." "Thanks, babe." Bill knocked on the children's doors on his way downstairs and made coffee. By the time Karin walked into the kitchen, Bill had made her a breakfast smoothie, poured coffee into her travel mug, and was preparing breakfast for the kids. Karin drank a smoothie. "Let's do it again tonight, just a little slower next time." "Certainly. What's the rush this morning?" "Hank wants me to meet with my former commander this morning." "A guy comes from Florida to meet with us about some family issue. You know Hank. He feels like he owes this guy the whole Navy Semper fee. Hank thinks this is serious and wants me to attend the meeting." Karin grabbed her coffee mug and kissed Bill before heading towards the door. Karin walked 3 blocks to the train station. It would be difficult for anyone watching her walk to guess that she was wearing a prosthetic leg under her trousers. The loss of his leg is the result of a shotgun blast while an NYPD officer was working on an anti-terrorism squad. So, Karin was a partner in the detective agency of Henry Hank Price. 6 months ago, Hank quit his job at Contractor, where he worked after leaving the NSA. Hank became Karin's regular partner, and thanks to his many contacts, their agency was doing quite well. They still needed following a wayward spouse type of job to make ends meet, but they gradually spent more and more billable hours doing research and background checks for Wall Street firms. Today, they met with Hank's former commander, but she didn't know what or why. Sitting on the train, Karin spent a few minutes thinking about how everything seemed to be changing. It was just a year ago. Bill was battling cancer, and their family's finances seemed to be heading into the abyss. Bill's beautiful hair fell out during chemotherapy. Karin and the kids were thrilled to have their heads shaved as a sign of family solidarity, but Bill somehow got wind of their plan and flatly refused to let them do it. Bill was so adamant that no one dared to contradict Bill. Nobody except Hannah, of course. One evening, their 15-year-old daughter came home with short hair. Her shoulder-length hair, the long hair she had had since she was a little girl, was gone. They were given to a charity that made human hair wigs for other cancer patients. Bill and Karin were so proud of their little girl that day. But Hannah's gesture led to another unexpected result. When Hannah looked in the bathroom mirror that evening, for the first time without those long locks of hair, Hannah saw someone looking at her in the mirror. It only took her a moment, but there it was. Uncle Hank was looking back at her. Hannah knew that her mother and father were not married when she was born, but always assumed that her father was her biological father. Hannah walked slowly down the stairs and into the study where her mother sat at her desk in the home office. "Mom, is there something you want to tell me about Uncle Hank?" Karin looked up from her papers and turned to look at Hannah. She immediately noticed the similarity and realized that Hannah now knew. "Baby, sit down." Karin talked about how she and Hank were lovers before she met Bill, how Hank left the country on assignment, not to abdicate his responsibility, but because of his duty to the agency, how Karin once met Bill when Bill caught her before she fell down the subway stairs. He became her lamaze coach and raised Hannah as his daughter. The three of them, Karin, Bill, and Hank, decided that Bill would raise Hannah as his daughter, and Hank became Uncle Hank. "We were going to tell you, baby, but we never knew when the right time would come. Do not get mad. It was only because everyone seemed so happy with the status quo. Nobody wanted to rock the boat. You know that your father, your real father, was there every day of your life. He was in the delivery room. He cut the umbilical cord. He changed your diapers. He fed you. He read you bedtime stories. He did everything because he loved you so much. Mom, this doesn't change how I feel about Dad." "That's good, baby. Blood does not define love or family. I'm glad you understand this. Tomorrow, I think we need to tell your father and Uncle Hank about what you discovered today. I think everyone will breathe a sigh of relief. You're taking it pretty well." I fully expected a much more emotional reaction. "Mom, I've been suspicious since we watched that Life movie last year. I saw you fidgeting on the couch next to me. You kept giving me sidelong glances. I just wasn't ready to insist. I liked the status quo and was afraid of what might change. Today, looking in the mirror, I think I just needed to know." Karin hugged Hannah before Hannah nearly jumped out of her arms. "Wait a minute, Mom, I just thought of something. Uncle Hank spends a lot of time here. You're still not with him, are you? Isn't this one of those weird threesome things? Please tell me you don't do this." Karin knew that this was seriously bothering Hannah, and she suppressed the laugh that almost escaped her. "God, no, Hannah. Neither your father nor I want to share. I promised your father before we got married that Hank and I would never get together as long as we were married. I kept this vow. I've kept my vow to leave everyone else since the day I met your father, and your Uncle Hank is too honorable a man to even try to break my oath. Your Uncle Hank and your dad are best friends and trust each other, and your dad trusts me. Neither I nor your Uncle Hank would ever break that trust." Hannah and Karin fell into each other's arms again and fell silent. Karin kissed Hannah's bald head and simply hugged her daughter tightly. As she hugged Hannah, she couldn't help but think to herself, "Thank God, everything went better than expected. I don't know how much more drama 1 year can cause. Bill's battle with cancer was traumatic. Thank God for modern medicine and the wonderful doctors, nurses, and just about everyone who worked so hard to keep her husband alive. It was hard work for everyone, especially Bill. It cost a fortune, but as of 8 months ago, the cancer was in remission. Surgery and chemotherapy took their toll. Karin could see how families could be torn apart by so much stress. The stress was twofold, not only due to the fight against the disease, but also due to financial difficulties. Last year, the Rowland family was drowning in debt. Bill could only work part-time, and then not work at all. Karin did everything she could to keep the agency going. She took on jobs that she usually would have refused. How many wandering husbands and wives can you follow before you tear of the sheer disrespect of it all? Karin lived for a rare message. "Sir or Madam, we have been monitoring your husband and could not find any evidence of adultery, neither physical nor emotional. Last year, Karin made a near-fatal mistake when she accepted a mission to find Tori Carson's husband. The fiasco resulted in Hannah being threatened by a gangster. Hank neutralized the situation. How? Hank never spoke, and the Rowland family never asked. Well, it may have started out as a fiasco, but it ended up being the financial lifesaver the Rowland family needed. Hank decided to quit his contract job and asked if he could join Karin's agency as a full partner. When Karin asked Bill's opinion, Bill did what Bill always does. He asked questions regarding price. They ended up asking a third-party broker to estimate the cost and other business-related questions. Bill never asked if it would be a problem if Hank was around full-time. Hank's cash injections didn't end there. After realizing Rowland's situation, Hank revealed that he had college funds for both Hannah, his biological daughter, and Anthony, his nephew. This allowed parents to use their children's college funds to pay off massive accumulated credit card debt and medical bills. Suddenly, the Rowland family was debt-free, although Bill was still unemployed. He spent his days at home doing research for Karin's agency when needed, and the rest of the time he was a house husband. Not the most manly thing for a former NCAA heavyweight wrestling champion. Reflecting on this turn of events, Karin could not help but feel happy. There were no debts, and her husband was alive and well. Several men on the train noticed a beautiful, middle-aged woman smiling to herself as the train pulled into Penn Station. The day went pretty well. Karin and Hank met with Thomas and John Beck. John's wife and son had disappeared, and there were some indications that they had passed through New York. The wife was involved with a cult-like religious group in Texas before disappearing one day, taking the child. Once the meeting ended, Karin finished some reports, and Hank got to work tracking down the wayward family. There was no doubt that Hank was determined to find his former commander's grandson. Karin's mood changed significantly on the train ride home that evening. While she was reading the afternoon edition of the Times, an article caught her eye. It was a report of a murder-suicide that occurred in an apartment on West Park Avenue. Mr. Clifford Fremont killed his wife and then committed suicide. Karin took out her cell phone and dialed a number from her contact list. When another phone rang, Karin took out her address book. George Jennings, an NYPD homicide detective, answered her call. "Karin, how are you?" "Lucy, George. I just read about the Fremont murder. Would you assist me? Could you please have someone check on Mr. Kevin Sanders? He works for Heiberg and Thomas and lives in apartment 820 at 435 Central Park West." "What's the matter?" "Sanders had an affair with Mrs. Fremont. I told Clifford Fremont this news 2 weeks ago. Let me tell you, he didn't seem all that upset. Obviously, I misunderstood him. I'll have someone check on Sanders." "Don't beat yourself up about it, Karin. You know as well as I do that it is impossible to predict how someone will react. The nature of the beast. Will you call me back when you find out?" "As soon as I find out, I'll call you. Say hi to Bill for me." Karin pressed end, put the phone back in her purse, and spent the rest of the trip looking out the window, doubting herself. Was there any sign that Fremont was going off the rails? She remembered that day 2 weeks ago. Clifford Fremont came from old families and even older historical America. He was a descendant of John Fremont, the first presidential candidate of the newly created Republican Party in 1856. For some strange reason, Clifford took pleasure in telling people about the connection between his great-great-grandfather and himself. Odd, because Clifford was an influential figure among New York State Democrats. Although Clifford inherited a significant amount from his grandfather, his personality led him to earn a small fortune on his own. He graduated magna cum laude from Dartmouth University, is an investment banker, the proud owner of a 109-foot Maxi Dolphin racing yacht, Wild One, and an even prouder woman, his wife, Katiana. Clifford first noticed Katiana at a party at the yacht club. She was with Thurston Howell, another member of the club. Clifford had a low opinion of Thurston, whose every dollar was inherited. Immediately captivated by Katiana's beauty, Clifford decided to steal her from Howell. It didn't take long for Clifford's plan to emerge. What Clifford didn't know was that Katiana had done her homework. Clifford's net worth was 3 times that of Thurston. Katiana learned early on that her beauty opened doors. Her mother taught Katiana another life lesson the day the handsome but middle-class captain of the soccer team asked her out. Katiana, don't agree. Loving a rich man is just as easy as loving a poor man. Don't make the same mistake I did. I married your father because he was handsome, and I foolishly fell in love with him. I could have it all. From that day on, Katiana followed her mother's advice and only dated rich men. It took her 5 years, now 23, to get to the place where she could go to the yacht club and feel like she belonged with these people. For 2 of these years, she lived in London as the mistress of a wealthy English industrialist. The man settled her in an apartment and showered her with gifts and money. The novel was going well. Katiana thought that this might even lead to marriage, until his wife returned from Geneva and forced him to abandon his mistress. Katiana was sent packing with a nice 6-figure severance package and her jewelry. Katiana returned to the States and settled in New York. It was only a few months before she caught the attention of Thurston Howell. But Howell had his last $10 million, and he was spending it too quickly. He would have been ruined before the end of the decade. Poor Thurston didn't know it, but he was just a conduit for Katiana's plans to find a richer target. Of course, in the meantime, Thurston was lucky enough to sleep with one of the most attractive women he had ever had, a woman who had few inhibitions when it came to sex. So while she and Thurston were having sex, Katiana was doing her research. Which man from Thurston's many circles of acquaintances should she target? The theatrical audience held some possibilities, more so than his sporting or drinking company. But the best target for seduction was the very handsome, very rich, and unmarried owner of that magnificent, large, beautiful yacht, the Wild One, Mr. Clifford Fremont. While Clifford Fremont planned to steal the blonde beauty from Thurston Howell, Katiana planned to seduce Clifford and become Mrs. Fremont. It was a match made in heaven. Katiana was not prepared for one unfortunate drawback. The rumors that Clifford was the worst bed partner any woman could bear were true. Katiana had sex with men who lacked technology, or men who were selfish about their partner's needs, or men who lacked the housekeeping down there. But she had never had sex with a man who combined all 3 of them into the most perfect threesome out of boredom in the bedroom. However, this made Clifford an easy target. Katiana's screams of joy when they had sex for the first time on board his yacht made Clifford feel like a stud. Katiana made a mental note to start doing Kegel exercises. She had to sign a prenuptial agreement, but it would still leave her with a fortune if she could hold out for a few years. The prenuptial agreement stated that she would receive $200,000 for each year of marriage and a share of any property earned during the marriage. With one caveat: any adultery on Katiana's part will nullify 90% of the payment. Katiana survived the first 3 years of their marriage without infidelity. She couldn't risk ruining all the work she put into Kegel exercises. Katiana's hints to Clifford when she tried to get him to use other means so she could get pleasure came to nothing. Clifford remained the most self-centered lover in the 5 boroughs. That's why, halfway through the 4th year of their marriage, Katiana was determined to cheat on Clifford. If she had any sense, she would have filed for divorce, settled for almost $1 million, and had some serious sex. Unfortunately, Katiana decided that $1 million was not enough. She wanted more. So, when the opportunity presented itself, Katiana gave in to her physical needs. It was the perfect storm. Factor 1. Katiana was upset with Clifford. He refused to buy her a penthouse on the top floor of their house, which had recently gone on the market. It was twice the size of their current 4,000-foot condominium, and with a much better view of Central Park. Clifford would not budge, no matter what, no matter how. Factor 2. Clifford refused to postpone the out-of-town meeting, and Katiana was obsessed with attending a party thrown by the backers at the Astor to celebrate the opening of the Klimt exhibition. Clifford released Katiana with the words, "Go alone. You know I can't stand backers or Klimts." And Katiana really went alone, which led to the 3rd factor. Katiana was dancing with a handsome young man when she couldn't help but notice his rather impressive equipment pressed against her. As they danced, the young man asked if she could have something to drink after the party was over. Katiana gave in to temptation but was afraid that she would be exposed. There were too many mutual friends who would notice that she was leaving with this man, and rumors might reach Clifford. She came up with a plan. Go get a room, and then in exactly 30 minutes we'll meet in the lobby. We'll only have 20 minutes or so. I'm sorry, but I can't let anyone find out and tell my husband. It was a testament to Katiana's beauty that the young man did not question the request. He immediately went to the front desk, paid $800 for the room, and 30 minutes later was sitting in a chair in the lobby. Katiana came up behind the chair. What number? 10 to 14. I'll be upstairs in 10 minutes. Take off your clothes. Go now. 10 minutes later, he answered a soft knock on the door. He was naked, and when Katiana looked at how nature had endowed him, she realized that she had made the right choice. Katiana didn't waste a second. She undressed and demanded to give her pleasure. The young man, Katiana never learned his name, did just that. It only took her 5 minutes to experience her first climax. When Katiana came to her senses, she demanded that he take her. As they both climaxed, for the second time that night, Katiana knew she had chosen the right person to have sex with. After another round, she got dressed and left the room only 30 minutes after she left the ballroom, but those 30 minutes were enough for the dam to break. As she walked towards the elevator, Katiana knew that this would not be the last time she would cheat on Clifford. It felt damn good. She will need to make several decisions. Quickly, for one night, or with a guy for a long time? The choice will depend on two main factors. What gives her the most pleasure? Over the next year and a half, Katiana slept with 4 more men. 2 were quick fixes, men she had once when the perfect opportunity presented itself. 2 were long-term boyfriends. Her first boyfriend was just a boy. Nathan Thomas worked as a building maintenance worker the summer before his freshman year of college. The 3-month romance began one day when Fremont's maid didn't show up one morning because her elderly mother was sick. Katiana couldn't believe how disgusting the garbage smelled in the kitchen. She almost vomited. What did Clifford throw there this morning, and why did it smell so bad? Katiana called downstairs to ask the doorman to come and take out the trash, but the doorman did not answer the phone. What the hell was wrong with these people? Was all Katiana could think about as she grabbed her bag from the trash can and headed towards the elevators. Thank God no one was in the elevator to see her take out her trash. Katiana went down to the basement where she assumed the dumpster would be when she saw a door marked maintenance. She opened the door and walked into the room, only to see a tall, muscular black man emerging from the shower stall. The surprise on Katiana's face was only surpassed by the look of surprise on the young man's face. How can I help you? That's all Nathan could squeeze out. Katiana tried not to stare at Nathan's equipment. It was difficult to say whether she succeeded or not. It had been 2 months since she had had normal sex. She held a plastic bag in her hand and had no words other than to say, "This stinks." Nathan wrapped a towel around his waist and grabbed his bag. "I'll take this to the trash container." He ran out of the locker room and the door closed behind him. He was gone for less than a minute, but when he returned, he was sure that the lady had disappeared. He opened the door, and she was still there. Katiana wasted no time. "Can you lock the door?" After she got what she came for, she thought it was time to get herself in order before they were caught. Katiana kissed Nathan tenderly in gratitude and got dressed. She ran to the elevator when it stopped on the first floor, and 2 people entered. Katiana was glad she didn't know the couple. Katiana entered her apartment and immediately filled the bathtub with hot water. While soaking in the bath, she thought about how nice it was to have sex with you like that. Below, Nathan was in a daze. He had heard stories about rich women hitting on guys like him, but he assumed it was all talk. He never thought he'd have the chance to fuck such a perfect woman, and this was in his first week of working here in the building. It was Nathan's uncle who warned him against mixing with rich white women. He said their husbands would hire someone to break his legs and maybe other parts of his body if they found out. But everything happened so quickly. This wasn't the last time Nathan and Katiana got together. For 3 months, until Nathan left for school, they met at least once and sometimes twice a week. It helped that summer when Clifford spent hours working on the Wild One. Although Katiana stayed on the yacht when he entertained clients and friends, she took time off when he was racing or training. This gave her many opportunities to meet Nathan. Katiana was sad to say goodbye to Nathan in the fall, but she also realized that she was lucky to have enjoyed 3 months of royal sex without getting caught. She decided not to tempt fate and remained faithful to Clifford until spring. 6 months after Nathan left for school, Katiana met Kevin Sanders at a health club. Sanders was a ladies' man, one of those gorgeous athletic gigolos who live to earn money and think they are God's gift to women. Kevin spent his budget on this gym specifically because the club had a reputation as a great place to find rich, bored Park Avenue wives. This turned out to be true. Kevin had just ended a year-long affair with the 40-year-old wife of a Wall Street banker when Katiana joined the fitness club. Kevin couldn't believe his luck when a clone of Barbie, who was not yet 30, started hitting on him. Katiana was amazed when she first saw Kevin working out on the machines. She hoped the rest of the package was as delicious as what was visible. Katiana had no doubt that she could seduce the object of her desire. There were very few men who could resist her. Their romance began a week after their first meeting. Kevin was a great lover, and he gave as much as he got. This was one of 2 reasons why Katiana was eventually caught. She enjoyed herself too much and became careless. Another reason was Kevin's brashness. At first, whenever Kevin humiliated Clifford, Katiana told him to stop. Katiana considered Clifford a worthy husband in almost every way except the bedroom, and believed that he deserved her respect. But as the weeks turned into months and the affair continued, Katiana began to lose respect for Clifford and allowed Kevin to humiliate him without defending her husband. Around this time, Katiana unconsciously stopped pretending in the bedroom. Suddenly, their lovemaking seemed too expensive for such little pleasure, and the moans weren't coming out like they used to. Clifford couldn't help but notice the difference. Katiana didn't notice anything. Katiana's fate was sealed the day Clifford unexpectedly walked into the health club. Clifford noticed the 2 lovers' glances and noticed Katiana's anxiety when a club employee told Katiana that her husband wanted to talk to her. While Katiana went to greet her husband, Clifford watched Kevin. That's it. A grin, a hint. This asshole fucked his wife. After talking with Katiana and leaving the club, Clifford made an appointment with a detective agency that was checking all the data of his company's personnel. Karin was hesitant to show Clifford explicit photos of Katiana and Kevin Sanders. In her experience, visual effects only add to the trauma when a spouse learns of their partner's betrayal. Karin did share photos of Katiana entering the Sanders apartment building and leaving an hour later on each of the 3 occasions she followed Mrs. Fremont into the apartment. Karin told the details, who, when, how often, but kept silent about the photographs. The fornicators were stupid and careless. The Sanders apartment faced a side street, and they had left the curtains open on one of those occasions when Karin had stalked Katiana there. From the roof of the building opposite, accessible by paying $200 to the building manager, Karin was able to take some very candid photographs. Unfortunately, Clifford Fremont insisted on receiving these photographs as well. He said the terms of the prenuptial agreement required proof. Karin provided him with 3 photographs confirming that there had been an affair. Karin watched Clifford carefully as he looked at the 3 photographs, waiting to see if he would start ranting or raving, making threats or losing his temper. Clifford did none of this. He made a face, thanked her, wrote a check for the balance of the account, took the written report and photographs, but he did not explode. Clifford went home and sat in his office, rereading the report and studying the photographs. His ego took a big hit when he read Karin's account of who he was. Kevin Sanders. He was a nobody. A quick search on LinkedIn gave him information about Sanders. Public school graduate, Rutgers of all places, and no academic achievements. Lousy bachelor's degree in marketing, junior associate, not even a partner, at the second-rate marketing firm of Heiberg and Thomas. Clifford's anger increased when he saw a photo of Katiana looming over Sanders' ready-to-go equipment. It was simply unfair. All his wealth, all his success, all his hard work, none of it could make up for his lousy 10 centimeters. Until this moment, Clifford had been planning some way of retribution against the man who raped his wife. Clifford didn't think about physical punishment, at least not from his own hands. He was confident that he could find someone else to do his dirty work. But this photo forced Clifford to personally take care of it in order to preserve his manhood. 2 weeks later, Clifford was knocking on Kevin Sanders's apartment door. Sanders had barely opened the door when Clifford's foot pushed it wide open. Kevin immediately recognized Clifford, but before he could move, Clifford pressed the stun gun to his chest. With Kevin unconscious, Clifford got to work. He dragged the body to the bed and tied Kevin tightly. It took less than 3 minutes. Clifford's heart was pounding all this time. Satisfied that Kevin was tied up, Clifford left the bedroom and headed to the kitchen to find something to drink to calm his nerves. He had no idea how intense the experience would be. He assumed years of racing would prepare him for this, but it turned out to be as stressful as the time he sailed through a summer squall when the waves threatened to capsize the Wild One. Clifford found some whiskey and poured it onto his 2 fingers. Not bad for a 12-year-old, he thought, pouring a second helping. With a glass in one hand and a bottle in the other, Clifford returned to the bedroom. He looked at Kevin, wondering when this asshole would wake up. He couldn't wait to begin his plan. However, everything went wrong. He soon found out that Kevin was dead. He lay back on his bed and wondered how much more could go wrong this month. He didn't deserve this. All he wanted to do was scare the hell out of the guy who screwed his wife. Make him think twice about getting involved with another man's wife. Clifford knew that, at worst, his lawyers would not be able to get him off with anything other than probation. But he knew this would be a game changer. He will have to go to jail. Even his lawyers weren't good enough to get him out without serving time. He needed time to think. Clifford got out of bed and walked around the apartment, removing everything he could touch, united Kevin, and then left the apartment. As Clifford walked from Kevin's apartment to his own, his thoughts became increasingly gloomy. It's all Katiana's fault, damn her. A million ideas flashed through his head. Could he have stripped most of his funds, boarded the Wild One, and fled somewhere without an extradition treaty? Or would it be better to get on a plane and get the hell out of town as quickly as possible? How long will it be before someone discovers the body? Can they make a connection between him and Sanders? Will Roland, the private detective, give him away? Could he pay some loser $1 million to confess to the crime and take the blame? At some point, he even thought about reconciling with Katiana. My God, this woman is so beautiful. But just as quickly, the image of her cheating on him popped into his head, and he was angry at her again for ruining his life. Clifford didn't make a decision until he got to his house and went to the restaurant around the corner. He ordered a double shot of their most expensive scotch, but the alcohol only dulled his mind, which was not the best formula for making life-changing plans. He finished his drink and headed home. As soon as Clifford entered the apartment, Katiana attacked him. Sometimes timing is everything. She couldn't have chosen a worse moment to express her disappointment. Where the hell have you been? I called you and found your phone in the closet. Clifford left his phone at home in case the cops could use it to track his whereabouts. He'd seen something like that in a movie. Katiana continued to pour out her heart. I hope you're damn happy. The Bensons bought a penthouse. Now I have to live 2 floors below that witch, Andrea. If you had bought this place when I asked you to, we wouldn't have to stay in this hole, Clifford snapped. And the next thing he knew, his arms were wrapped around Katiana's neck. After the deed was done, Clifford collapsed on the floor. Well, that settles it all. My life has officially turned to shit. This solves everything. Clifford had already decided how he would solve his dilemma. Now the only question was the method. Clifford realized that he didn't like pain, and this thought gave him an idea. He went into Katiana's bathroom and rummaged through her medicine cabinet. The tablets were there. Finally, something went right today, he thought to himself when he discovered that the prescription had been refilled and the bottle was almost full. He filled the jacuzzi tub with warm water, poured himself a large glass of spring water, and took all the pills. Karen's depression only worsened as she walked from the train station to her home. Bill Rowland knew something was wrong within minutes of Karen walking through the door. Bill had a great day and was in a great mood. Over the past few months, Bill has been sending out his resume, focusing on small startups that could use someone with his knowledge and experience. Last week, he talked to a company that would be a great fit for him. The CEO was a young entrepreneur who was savvy, but she realized she needed help with her finances. Today, she offered Bill a job as CFO with a decent salary and the opportunity to do even better if the company went public. Bill didn't share his job search with Karen because he didn't know if anything would come of it. He knew how Karen would react. She would be a cheerleader, telling him at every disappointment how much she loved him and how stupid any company was that didn't hire him. Just like Karen encouraged him during his cancer treatment, she always showed concern. Honestly, Bill didn't want to go through that again. Perhaps it was a little retrograde, but he just needed to feel like a man again, a man who could take care of his wife and children. Bill was eager to share the news about working with Karen tonight, but decided to wait when he recognized the look on her face. An expression that meant something was wrong. He will be patient. The family had dinner together. Hannah and Anthony spent most of dinner telling their parents about what was happening at school and at their sports practices. Bill watched Karin while the two children talked. Her calm reaction to their concern, she listened but didn't ask questions, confirmed to him that what was bothering her was serious. 10 minutes after dinner, the bell rang, which Karin had been so afraid of. Kevin Sanders' body was found in his apartment. George tried to assuage Karin's guilt. "Karin, believe me, just like you, I've spent a lot of time with all sorts of criminals, some terrible, some kind. These three were not saints. They may not have deserved to die so brutally, but all three of them did something terrible to set in motion the mechanisms that ultimately led to their deaths. Go hug your family and don't you dare blame yourself for it." The two children were in their rooms doing homework, and Bill poured a glass of wine for Karin and a shot of rye for himself before meeting Karin in the office. "Tell me about it." Karin told Bill about the three people found dead today. Dead because she provided one of them with evidence of his wife's infidelity. Bill listened without interrupting before answering. "You can't blame yourself. I'm sure you had no idea that this guy would react so violently. I know you better than anyone." "That's what George Jennings said. He was the one who told me on the phone, telling me that they had found the body of his wife's boyfriend. It's not just that. It's chasing cheating spouses to make ends meet. I would give almost anything if the agency could focus on background checks and stop looking out for adultery." "Almost all? How about a kiss?" Karin looked at Bill. She was a little resentful of him for being so disrespectful and taking her concerns so lightly. It wasn't like him. Karin looked at Bill and noticed a hint of a smile. "What's happening? Why are you smiling?" "I was hesitant to say anything before because you were obviously preoccupied with whatever was bothering you, but now might be the right time. I was offered a job as CFO at a small startup. My starting salary is enough for you to cut costs at the agency exactly as much as you want." Karin could only look at Bill. Did she dream of it? Bill was amused by her reaction. It was incredibly unusual to see Karin so puzzled. "I guess you owe me a kiss." Karin shook herself out of her daze, set down her drink, and jumped onto Bill's lap. She gave Bill the kiss he deserved. Bill and Karin went to Katiana's service and did not regret coming. When Karin read that there would be a service for the young woman, she asked Bill to accompany her. They could sit in the back of the church and remain incognito. Bill thought it was a bad idea, but kept his thoughts to himself. Karin seemed to need reassurance. Less than a dozen people were present. The priest conducting the service had no idea who Katiana was and made some unconvincing general remarks. The two friends gave eulogies. Both commented on Katiana's physical beauty and her sense of style, but nothing they said made Katiana anything other than a hollow Barbie doll clone. Bill and Karin left before the end of the second eulogy. They walked out into the sunlight. Bill saw tears in Karin's eyes. He hugged her and called a taxi. In the taxi, Karin finally spoke. She didn't deserve to die, but my God, what an empty vessel. If anything illustrated the difference between the two women, it was the turnout for Karin's surprise 45th birthday party, which took place 4 months after that service. By the time Bill, Hannah, and Hank had finished putting together the guest list, they realized that they would need a decent-sized hall to accommodate the guests. Of the 130 invited, 98 came that evening. Even Samuel Grayson, who as a teenager was one of Karin's first arrests for joyriding in a stolen car, and whom Karin helped put his life back together, could be found standing next to and drinking beer with Karin's former station commander. Cops, criminals, friends, and family are all here to eat, drink, tell stories, and celebrate. A few weeks before the party, Karin knew what to expect. She was a detective after all, but she kept it to herself and feigned surprise as Bill led her into the hall. Bill knew that wasn't true. An hour later, when they were finally able to be alone, Bill whispered, "You knew all along, didn't you?" Karin simply smiled, grabbed the back of Bill's head, and kissed him. The cheers of those watching almost drowned out Karin's response. I love you, Bill Rowland. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.